This is Leafs Morning Take with Nick Alberga and Jay Rosehill.
Now we've got a fight started here right off the bat with Rosehill.
30 minutes of live, nonstop Leafs talk starts now.
All right, after a 4-day break, the NHL returned last night with a bevy of games in action. But that said, the Leafs are still off for a couple of days, and a Leafs game day we still await it on Friday when they visit the Columbus Blue Jackets. Presented by PointsBet Canada and Montana's. It's the Tuesday edition of Leafs Morning Take. Nick Alberga and Jay Rosehill with you. What's up, Rosie? I was a winner last night, by the way. Already on track here.
You're such a dick. Like, you you lob up the softballs at minus 180 and act like you're bringing down the house or something like that. Congratulations. It's great. I actually go for real money, but it's neat. I enjoy it. I'm just excited for this show this morning, buddy.
Just like you in the show, just chipping away. That's what I do in the betting landscape too, okay?
Yeah, you're like Ish or whatever on that poker movie. Just keep grinding out that rent money, buddy.
All grinding, baby. So you mentioned a blockbuster show for you today. We have blockbuster shows all the time, but we're going to talk about Crosby's comments at All-Star Weekend. We've got listener question and answer and the feature presentation. Bruce Boudreau, former Toronto Maple Leaf, will stop by in about 10 minutes from now to touch on all things Toronto Maple Leafs. If there's one thing I did enjoy from my 2 years covering the Leafs as their game day host was, number one, working with Gord Stellick, who's an absolute legend, and the fact that he's really good friends with Bruce Boudreau. Had Gabby on quite a bit, and just talking hockey and talking Leafs with Gabby is like the best thing in the world, whether it's the NHL or the Leafs. So I think you're really going to enjoy this. We have him on in about 10 minutes or so. We just connected with him, just an absolute gem. Talked some wrestling already, but he's fired up to be on here and talk some Leafs.
Yeah, damn right, man. It's I'm excited to get into that so we can bang off these first couple of topics and get right to the meat of the episode.
I like it. So first and foremost, remember to subscribe, tap that like button, leave us a review wherever you're checking us out, and don't forget to visit theleafsnation.com for the very latest on all things Toronto Maple Leafs. Also, as you all know by now, we're in the process of migrating over to our very own YouTube page. We just hit 300 subs the other day, so fired up about that. Make sure to subscribe and like, as you see on your screen there, courtesy producer Alex at the Leafs Nation 401, at the Leafs Nation 401. Make sure to subscribe because sooner rather than later, we will be going over there permanently, and the live show will be taking place there as well. So thoughts, comments, questions, or concerns, drop us a line in the chat down below here on YouTube, and we'll get to that later on in the show. But for now, we're going to get over the boards. All right, so topic number one, and you brought this to the table yesterday. We were going back and forth via text on what to talk about in a bye week for the Leafs. It can't be too Leafs heavy because there's not much going on as we get set for their arrival back onto the NHL scene on Friday and Saturday. So I thought there was some curious comments, and good on you to flag this. But Sidney Crosby, of course, the great Sidney Crosby, called for a change to the playoff format at All-Star Weekend, admitting he prefers the old playoff format. You see it on the screen there, courtesy Tim and Friends. Fantastic show. I've been on there. He thought it made more sense, at least in his opinion, to go back to what worked before. How do you view things? Do you like the current format or the old format, Rosie?
Yeah, I really don't like the new format, man. I mean, with the wild card and it's just within the division, it's just so boxed in, and it's hard because back before, when it was 1 through 8 in the conference, people would be like, man, like say the Calgary Flames would never play the Oilers in the playoffs, and they did last year, and it was just a fantastic series, and all of Western Canada or Alberta was all jacked up about it, and you can get those battles going on, and they're trying to get some in-conference rivalries going. I understand why they went to it. But like, let's be honest, man, you're playing 82 games an entire season. That's just like months and months and months and months of grinding, and you just don't seem to get anything for it. You get thrown into the playoffs. I mean, look at the Toronto Maple Leafs this year. I know we're a Leafs eccentric show and we get heat for bitching all the time, but it's what we're looking at, right? And it is what it is. But we've known that we're going to play the Tampa Bay Lightning since what, Christmas? It's just like, well, what are we grinding for 4 and 5 months more for? What are we banging up our bodies? Like, what are we trying to get? We know that the only thing that matters is that first round of playoffs and the playoffs in general. And you know who you're playing, and it's kind of shitty. And I mean, the Toronto Maple Leafs have been third, second, fourth in the NHL, in the whole league, all year long. And again, they're going to run like the last 3 years that they're running into, you know, we ran into the Tampa Bay Lightning. They're been to the Stanley Cup Finals 3 times in a row. If you're finishing in
Yeah.
the top of the NHL, you shouldn't run into a team of that caliber that early. You just shouldn't. You should face one of the bottom tier teams, and those teams can still beat you, but run through them and then build your way up to the second and third round, and then we see who rises to the top for the Stanley Cup Finals. And I totally agree with Sidney Crosby, man. I think it should be kind of a 1-8, and it should be rewarded for what you did over that grind of an 82 game season, because at the end of the day, that's really what's showing. I mean, a 7-game series is the ultimate of like what your team is, but over 82 games a season for a whole year, that's really like your group of work for a hockey team. And to not get rewarded for that and to have that mean less, I just don't think is right.
Yeah, not to play devil's advocate right now, but this is how it would play out in the old format: 1 versus 8, 2 versus 7, 3 versus 6, 4 and 5. It would be Boston, Pittsburgh, Carolina, Washington. The Devils and the Rangers would be outstanding. And 4 and 5 would be
Totally.
the Maple Leafs and the Tampa Bay Lightning. So you have
Oh,
flawed
God.
logic, my friend.
Well, it serves
Yeah.
me right for not doing my homework, but not in the
No,
last.
it's
In general,
yeah.
that's better, I think.
Yeah. I don't know. But to that point, though, what I do remember specifically about the 3-6 and the 1-8 matchups were the fact that those Carolina teams would have like 70 points and win the Southeast Division and be, have home ice in the first round. It made no sense. So I think with anything they institute, there's going to be pros and cons. So all I say is be careful what you wish for. That's all I'm saying, Rosie.
100%. Nothing's perfect. I'm not screaming that this is insanity and how are we not doing it the other way. I'm not. I'm just saying, after, grinding over the standings for the last little while, you look at it and you're like, it would kind of be nice if it was. And not just because it benefits the Maple Leafs, but because it just seems right where, again, I go back to the analogy of the Toronto Blue Jays being in their division with, especially, a decade back where it was the Boston Red Sox and the Yankees, and it was just impossible. It didn't matter what team the Toronto Blue Jays fielded; they just had no chance in that division. And I get senses of that in hockey, and I don't think it's right. I really want the best team to rise to the top and to have the best chance. And the alternative to that is, hey, if you're the best, you got to beat the best. So it doesn't matter if it's in the first round or the third or fourth, you're going to have to run through a guy. But it's just tough when you're in a division where it's really stacked and you're top handful in the league, and you got to face, Stanley Cup champion caliber material in the first round every single year.
So let me ask you this question. We're going to skip over the listener queue, producer Alex, if you're listening, and get to Gabby momentarily. But let me ask you this question. Should the league listen more? Should they be more coherent? Maybe that's too strong of a word, but should they listen more to their star players when they speak up about, conversations like this one?
I think they do. I think they got their hand on the pulse a little bit, and they understand what's going on. And, social media these days and player influence is as big as it's ever been, because it's out there in the open, and it can go viral, and you can see how many people gravitate towards, a suggestion like that of Sidney Crosby's. And, Sidney Crosby, he's no guy that's just off the cuff throwing, whatever into the wind. He is calculated, and he understands the weight of his comments. And for him to say that, I believe that he really believes that it should be that way. And for him to stand on a podium at All-Star game and give that comment, he knows very well that people are going to be listening. And I think the NHL does a good job of adapting to things. They make changes. They are not the old guard that just sits there and is stubborn and won't listen to anyone and is stuck in the Stone Ages. They're not that way. They understand how things
Yeah.
are going, and they're willing to listen. And they've made tons of changes over the course of, forever. They're constantly modifying their league and the way things operate, and I got no qualms with them. It's just another stone in the mix that Crosby said, hey, what about this? I think that this is, remember this, this was kind of fair. So take
Yeah.
it for what it's worth. I think the NHL does a good job of adapting, though.
Yeah, I'm just curious, what they do over the next couple of years. A lot of people have been calling for a change to the playoff format. I'm just saying, be careful what you wish for, because again, you look and you're like, oh, it's Toronto and Tampa still, because it seems like it's the folks over in Toronto here in this beautiful market who do the most complaining. And then it doesn't matter to me. You know this. I've covered this team for X amount of years. They lost to Columbus. They lost to Montreal. They lost to Boston. They can lose to anybody, is what I'm saying. So I really could not care less who they play. And I always like the old Ric Flair adage, to be the best, you got to beat the best. So bring on the Tampa Bay Lightning. Meantime, Montanus is bringing back the viewing party with daily deals in 2023. It's Tuesday, which means $5 tacos. And don't forget, we're also giving away a $50 gift card to Montana's. On Friday, we gave away $25 last week. It's $50 this week. Here's how to enter for your chance to win. Like this post, follow Montana's BBQ and TLN DC on social media, and tag your friends in the comments. Each comment is an entry. And again, Rosie, will be giving away the $50 gift card on Friday on this show.
Yeah, for some reason that just turns my crank to start a good date night. $50 at Montana's. My wife was like, "Why did you tell everyone that we met at a bar?" And I was like, "Cuz, baby, that was a good night of dancing on the dance floor. That's why."
I love that.
But
I love that. Yeah, go ahead.
tacos, that taco thing, it's always rib night or half night wing night. The taco night, $5 tacos. Like, dude, if you live in, like, I'm assuming that's around Ontario and Toronto, it's not cheap to live there. You roll into a nice place like Montana's and $5 tacos, and you can just destroy as many of those as you want with a $50 gift card. It's a pretty good deal, man. You
I
don't
don't
see
mind it at
those.
all. You know what I also don't mind? Today's guest, salt of the earth. So happy to bring in the one and only Bruce Boudreau. Gabby, what's going on, buddy? How are you?
Well, I'm fine, but not much is going on. I can tell you that much.
Yeah, you
With
I know
me,
getting
you're
anyway.
bored?
watching the game.
You
Yeah,
getting
I know
bored,
you're watching
Bruce,
the
or
game,
what do you
though, eh?
do with your days?
Well, you know what? I know this is going to be hard to believe, but I just got back from the gym, uh,
Attaboy.
Okay.
and but the rest of the day, I'll go watch our. I got a junior team here in Hershey. I'll go watch them practice at 1 o'clock today, and then I'll come back and I'll get ready to watch the games tonight and see how it goes.
Did you happen to check out last night's slate, Gabby?
Yeah, I watched most of the games. I mean, the I watched mostly the Ranger game. I really get intrigued. I think they're a really good hockey club, and I wanted to see if Calgary they've got to step it up in my mind to make the playoffs, let alone be the juggernaut they were last year. So I mean, they're always interesting to watch, and I think they're starting to step it up a little bit. Markstrom's starting to play a lot better, and so I like watching that game. And then I watched Minnesota and Arizona at the end before I went to bed. But other than that, just flipped back and forth between the other games.
What do you think of the Horvat fit with the Islanders? Obviously, they get the victory, but they're really, really struggling to score goals right now, Gabby. I was seeing they've scored 2 or less in 8 straight and 13 of 14. I don't know how you do that.
I don't either. I read that because that was another game paying attention to just to watch Bo. But I mean, uh, that's pretty hard to do. And I mean, if you look at their players, they got some pretty good players there. So I mean, it's hard to imagine them getting two or under. But the one thing I did notice about them is they're so stingy defensively. They think defense before offense. So a lot of times they don't take a chance to get the goal. Okay, instead of going in, I'm going to stay out and make back and that's for one thing. But they scored a power play last night for the first time in opportunity. Bo held power play. I mean, I think, and I've told a lot of people this that other Pavelski, I used to play when I was in Anaheim and watched him a lot. That Bo's probably as good a tipper in front of the net on the power play, on the shot passes and everything else as anybody in the league. And I think got 11 or 12 shot tip goals. I mean, when Dobson's taking shots from the point, it just gives you that added advantage there. And he's really good in the bumper position. and he's got such a great release. So I think it should help the Islanders score some more goals. But if you watch the game, even when they had the 2-1 lead, you watch every team when they pull the goalie, everybody goes for the empty net. The Islanders were just looking to dump the puck out at the red line. They weren't going for the empty net. So I mean, that's just the mindset that they've got, I think, going forward.
Rosie?
Yeah, just protect and play defense first. Bruce, we appreciate you coming on, man. I know you've had a lot of media, asks of you lately, but I went a little bit deep in your hockey DB and kind of geeked out a little bit there a few days ago. And I mean, if you go back to your Marlboro days, Bruce, you've been involved very much so in a high level of hockey for 50 years now. And I mean, as a Toronto boy, to grow up where you did and to play for the Maple Leafs and to have the playing career that you did, and then just to step into coaching the way you did and to, eclipse even your playing career as far as amount of years and time in the NHL with coaching, it's really impressive to me. I don't think you could scour Toronto and find a guy with more experience than you do. And I wanted to pick your brain about kind of that mid to late 70s, early 80s when you were playing for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I think everyone would kind of like to hear, if you go back to that, what was the culture like on that team? What was it like to play for the Maple Leafs in Toronto? The ownership, who was on your team? Can you give us a little insight of being on the Maple Leafs during that era?
Well, thanks, Jay. The best years were the 78, 79 Leafs, and maybe 77, 78 when Roger Nielsen took over. The culture was, it was a pretty serious time in Leaf hockey, and the biggest problem was that the Montreal Canadiens were in the same league. And they probably had, the 77 Canadiens, maybe the greatest team of all time.
Yeah.
But Leafs were really good back then. And I mean, they were led obviously by Daryl Sittler, and who still was, to me, is an amazing captain. And I'll give you an example of what a good captain will do here is I remember being called up that year, and I was actually going pretty good. I think I had like 23 points in 25 games or something like that. And I was starting to think I was a pretty good player at that point. And I would be one of the last guys on the ice for practice, one of the first guys to leave. And I remember leaving early one day, or as soon as practice was over, going off and come running after me. It was Daryl grabbed me by the throat and, or the jersey, and put me up against the wall. And he said, listen, he says, I'm the best player on the team. I'm the first one on and the last one off. You're never, ever going to get better if you don't stay on and work on things after practice. And I just looked at him and I was in like shock, but it stayed with me and resonated with me the rest of my life. And I don't think I was ever the last one off, or I think probably the first one on ever since that day. But I mean, that's what the kind of locker room he had. I mean, you add Dan Maloney to that, who came from Detroit, was the captain of the Red Wings, and you add the Tiger Williamses and the Lanny McDonalds and the Boreas Salmings. I mean, it was a really tight team, and I mean, we had to be tight the 1 year that we beat the Islanders in 7 games, but then again you run into the Montreal Canadiens, and I think it was very similar to a Leaf team of today's era, whereas in the playoffs you run into a team you're a really good team, but you run into a great team, and I think that's what it was like back then. I mean, I could never stick there, but I mean, for any length of team, the 78 team, I think I was there the whole year, but I sat out half the time myself. But that was the most fun I'd had in hockey, playing with the Leafs for that whole year.
So you coach against this Leafs team, as you mentioned earlier on this season. What do you make of this current edition of the team, and do you think they have a legit shot this year?
I really do. I mean, to me, they're a top 5 team in the NHL, and I mean, I think their goaltending is a lot better this year. I think they play a way more of a defensive game. I mean, if you look in the past few years, it was run and gun, and they let their top 6 just score. And but I think if you look at them now, they're in the top 10 defensively in the league, and that's what you have to be. You have to be. You look at the best defensive teams, and they're the teams that are up the top. And I think they've got to, I mean, I think Sheldon's done a great job of really sort of saying, okay, this might be, we could tweak this here and tweak that there, and this will become a better team. And I think they have. And I think they'll be a really tough out in the playoffs. But unfortunately, I mean, as you guys were talking before I came on, I mean, in the first round, it's going to be two of the best teams in the NHL going at it. And I have my own thoughts, by the way, on on the the playoffs and the formats, just like
Can we
Sydney
hear
does. But I
that?
mean, yeah, I'd love it. I mean, telling everybody who I think, like, I mean, there's two things that hockey keeps wanting is more revenue, and and they got to reward teams for being the best. And I look at baseball. They have a one game playoff, okay,
Yeah.
and but the thing with that one game playoff is they have to use their best pitcher. So when they start the next round, I mean, they're starting at a disadvantage because they usually
Yeah.
don't have their best pitcher pitching until maybe game four of the playoffs, and it's only a 3 out of 5. And the same thing with basketball is if you look at there's a play-in game, and that team usually plays against a top seed and has very little chance. Matter of fact, they've never won that play-in game. A 16 seed has never beat a one. So I mean, and I agree with you that the season is such a grind. There has to be a better reward for the teams that end up in first place. And I would think, like, if you had a 2 out of 3 series, and for the 8th place and the 9th place team, and then they've got to start right away against the top team in the division with a day off, and they don't have that time to scout them or prepare for them. That gives the number one seed an advantage. But I think they've earned it over 6 months. They've
Yeah.
earned an advantage, not because if you look at home ice, doesn't even mean that much anymore. I've been
Yeah.
fortunate or unfortunate to win 8 division titles, and every time we've lost, it's been in a game 7, and we've been the home team. And
Yeah.
so it's not that much. You need a more of an advantage, almost like it was in the early 80s when one played 16 in the playoffs. But I mean, that's I think something should give where the the top seed has more of an advantage over the bottom seed. And Toronto versus Tampa, there's not much difference in either one. And
Mhm.
one team that could win the Stanley Cup is going to be out in the first round.
It's going to
Exactly.
go
It seems
7.
like
Yeah.
there's too many good teams that are going to be out in the first round because someone has to win. And you know as well as anybody, Bruce, like that grind of the regular season, my God, are you telling me you're not going to give any cadence to that? You're not going to reward anything for someone that puts together everything that you have to do to get to the top of the barrel in a regular season NHL season? It's there's not enough reward for it. And again, you can be the team that kind of doesn't get it done, and you're kind of well matched against your first round opponent. It's not really fair, and it's not really why we play those 82 games, it seems like.
Yeah, I mean, it's an anomaly with the Leafs in Tampa, but I mean,
Yeah.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. I mean, um, teams are divisions are they're like in the Pacific Division, for example. There's 3 teams that are within 1 point of each other, and they've got to battle all the way to the wire. But the Toronto
Totally.
Tampa thing, like you said, has been decided since Christmas, basically, and now they just got to maintain and not get hurt and keep
Yeah.
up with the Joneses, stay in their position. So that's who they know they're going to play. Um, and sometimes I would think that it might be tough to mentally just keep when they know where they're already set up.
So, Gabby, we're less than a month away now from the trade deadline. I was just curious, as somebody who's a head coach in this league, what type of role the head coach has in the process of sort of deliberating upon what players to target, which what players not to, and also along those lines, what do you think the Leafs should look at adding between now and the deadline?
Um, Well, I think the head coach depends on who the GM is, quite frankly, as to what kind of role you play in. But I would think any good coach and good GM relationship, they would be doing a lot of talking on a daily basis, and they would know what they need to target, what the weakness is on their team, and where we could go. And I mean, but it's a tough line, because if you've got a really good team, you really got to worry about chemistry, which is an awful lot too. So you don't want to upset the apple cart. So there's a lot of talking going on. That's why, they start talking trades in October and November, but it doesn't get done till March, because there's a lot of things that go into these trades. But I mean, I think a good GM and a good coach, they find out what they need. They try to identify it over the other 31 teams and see if they can't get it done. As far as the Leafs are concerned, I mean, they've improved the goaltending. Their defensive game is great. They got still some of the most dynamic and best offensive players in the league. I mean, and even they've taken an extra step, quite frankly, with the year Nylander's having. I mean, he's jumped right into the Marner Matthews to me conversation as to who's the best in that team. So, but what wins? It's like in baseball, it's pitching, and in hockey, it's goaltending and defense in the end. And you can never not need another great defenseman. Giordano's having a really good year, but he's almost 40 years old. And when you're thinking about playing into June, you gotta wonder how much he's going to have left in the tank. Brody's getting older. I don't know if Muzzin will be back at all. So I mean, to me, they could always use another really good player. Who it would be, I don't know. But their forward lines seem really good. They score an awful lot of goals when they want to. But I think they could use somebody to help Morgan Riley on the power play a little bit, and also be a good shutdown guy. So if I was to focus on something, it would be a defenseman.
So Bruce, knowing what you know with your history, I was when you agreed to come on the show, a guy, Luke Shen, texted me and said, "Hey, Bruce is a beauty. Tell him I said hi." Knowing what you know about him so intimately, do you think he'd be a good fit to go back to Toronto? I mean, I can't say enough about the way that guy has kept himself in the league and adapted to the new style of play and become like that veteran physical presence that's got leadership qualities as well.
Well, now he's a scoring machine. He got a goal and assist last night. So
There you go.
um, listen, Luke was one of my favorite players, and I don't know what the plans are with him, but he would be a welcome addition to any team. I think there's a
Yeah.
reason Tampa wanted him, for even last year. They were looking for him, and it wasn't nothing was done. But Luke Shen is going to be a guy that's wanted by a lot of teams. His attitude is perfect. His work ethic is perfect. So I mean, he's going to be a wanted guy. I don't know
Yeah,
if he wants to move him, but he's going to be a wanted guy.
for sure.
I was just going to ask you to wrap. So I put out a funny tweet, I thought, last week about you potentially going to the TNT panel. What's next for you? Would you be open to media again? And if TNT came calling, would you answer that call, Gabby?
Oh, I mean, I'll answer any call from hockey people on work. So that's not a question. I mean, you know what? It's retirement or anything like that has never been really something that I ever want to think of. I mean, I was home 2 days when my wife was phoning my agent, say, "Get him out of the house. Find something for him." So I mean, I think I'm going to start going back to the NHL Network again, which I did when I wasn't working time. And then after that, what happens? I mean, I always still want to get in the game. I still always have the passion for it. So you never know what's going to happen, but hopefully something good happens down the road.
I have
Well,
a feeling
Gabby,
you're
you're the
not even
absolute.
close to
Yeah.
done. You're not even close to
You
done
there?
coaching. I have a funny feeling there, Bruce.
Oh,
Did we
well, I
lose you?
appreciate
Sorry.
it.
Okay.
Like, Jay, you were in Norfolk when I was in Anaheim, but you didn't come to camp.
Yeah, I remember that during the lockout there. I was done with Toronto,
Jay,
and
can you hear me?
yeah, Yeah, we're chopping up a little bit right now, but no, I
Am
remember
I losing
your
you
coach.
guys?
I got you now. Can you hear us? Shit, are we glitching?
Yeah,
I can hear you
yeah, I think we lost. Yeah.
now. Sorry, but yeah, was just if you can hear me,
We got you.
I was commenting on Jay was in Norfolk when I was in at the time. You didn't come to camp, so I didn't really. It was during the lockout because I went down to North to watch you guys a couple times, so I remember that. So you did well down there.
Yeah, I
And
remember
then
you, Bruce. I had signed late to find somewhere to play during the lockout, and wasn't sure what was going to happen when the league started up again. I ended up getting moved to Philadelphia. But I remember a time, I don't remember what rink we were playing in, but I'd been in a couple of fights the night before, and my face had a bunch of jersey burn on it. I was all scraped up, and I just remember you coming up the stairs from the bottom of the glass there, and I was sitting watching something. I don't know where we were. We might have been in Hershey or something. And you'd come up, and I was like, "Oh, there's Bruce. That's cool." And you sat down right beside me, and you started looking at my face, and you were analyzing the fight that I was in. You must have watched it on YouTube, and you were going over, "Oh, he was doing this jersey jab shit," and that's how much it scrapes you up. Those jerseys need to be changed. They mark you up too much and stuff like that. And I was just in shock that like you were that dialed in to know some pigeon playing in your minor league team and to actually look at his fight that he had got in. And from that day on, I knew, I was like, that guy's a player's guy. That guy's a people's guy. So we definitely appreciate that you came on to our show today and gave us your insight, Bruce.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Anything for Nick, you know. But I mean, it's all good. I'm really happy to do it, and anytime I can talk about the Leafs, you know, I mean, once I'm not working, they're my favorite team again, so it's all good, and hope they succeed this year.
Sounds good, Gabby. We'll
Us
talk
too.
soon. Appreciate it, okay?
All righty, thank you guys.
Thanks,
See you
Bruce.
later.
All right.
One of the best people in the game right there, Gabby Boudreau, man. What'd you think?
What a beauty!
Yeah, he's a
Yeah,
gem, man.
that's
Like, he
good.
just loves talking hockey. It's great.
That's why I'm mad we got a 30-minute thing. Let's get a 2-hour long form going and just pick that guy's brain, get a glass of wine in his hand, and let's go. He'd be endless, man. It'd be so fun. But
Oh,
no,
he
that
would
was
be.
wicked, man.
Yeah, tons of fun. Obviously, got some bits and pieces there with the Leafs this past too. So I think we sprinkled on quite a bit there in 20 minutes. It should be fun to listen back and look back at that one. But for now, the wrap up is brought to you by our friends at PointsBet Canada. All right, so as mentioned, I was a winner to kick off the week, so it's night 2. I want to go 5 for 5 this week, so I'm going to look at that Tampa San Jose game. Your boy Luke Shen in the mix there. I like the Tampa Bay Lightning puck line. Plus 100 is the last number I looked at that game. They're coming off just being shit pumped last night by the Florida Panthers. It was 7-1. I know Brian Elliott's likely going to play in this game and not Andrei Vasilevsky, who surrendered 7 goals in the game for just the 3rd time in his unbelievable career. But I expect a bit of a response from Tampa on home ice tonight against a lesser opponent in the San Jose Sharks. So give me the Bolts puck line in that one, Rosie.
Well, I like it. I'm not sure what you're talking about, Shanner. He's on the Vancouver Canucks, but hey,
Oh,
it's
yes, my bad.
rare time I get to correct you. It's usually me just spouting off about nothing. But dude, going for 5 for 5, that's ridiculous, man. Good for you. I will stay out of your way. I'm not going to make any comments. You're on fire. I don't care what bets they are. You are nailing everything this week. Good for you. You're on another one of those heaters. And honestly, if I was smart, I would actually tail you closer and make some money because you're hitting a lot of stuff. Like, what is your percentage? Like 85?
I don't know. I don't even keep track of that shit.
That's a little bit nuts. Good for you. No, everyone listening, jump on board. He's hot. He's hot.
Yeah, and then you say that, and it's like, oh, no, thank you. But, my mistake. Tampa, of course, Shanner won 2 cups there. Could potentially go back there. We are just talking about him with Gabby, too. That's why I was stuck on my head. Anyways, let's look at the chat here. Canucklehead, as a Canucks fan, I have 2 aspirations for the rest of the season. The Canucks bottom out and get a good lottery shot at Bedard, and you boys make the second round. So we appreciate that. You never know with the Toronto Maple Leafs. They haven't made the second round in almost 2 decades. So I wouldn't hold your breath on that front. And he also writes in, Bruce, there it is. A lot of love for Bruce Boudreau. You're a good coach, says Jim, just in a bad situation. How would you coach to improve performance of Leaf D-man? Well, we touched on the Leafs a bit. I think that's the one thing that stood out for me in the interview is that his respect and love for Toronto's back end, which has been a really good story this season. They've been really, really stealth defensively, and nobody really talks about it because of the guys they have up front, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, every year it seems like what happens in the playoffs is they can't score that big goal to win the game. So it becomes, that is important for sure. But I think historically their downfall has kind of been their goaltending and their defense. And I really believe they have solved those. And I mean, if you talk to guys who have played and won cups and stuff like that, they will say that just go through the years, man. You do not win without big boy defense and good goaltending. It just doesn't happen. It's almost impossible to win the Stanley Cup in the manner that you have to go through that war to get there without defense and goaltenders. And I think they've updated that. And Bruce obviously touched on that too, and he agrees. And I think he was touching on maybe another solid D-man to kind of take that Muzzin spot, to help out Gio and some of those guys to really solidify. And then all you can do is hope that your big boys are scoring lots of goals in the playoffs, man. I think we got the team to get to the second. I mean, why are we even talking about this, man? We got the team to get to the second round of the playoffs. They're third in the league all goddamn year. They're one of the best teams in the world. And we're talking about, can they get to the second round? It's the weirdest thing in the world.
It is, but it just shows you the parity in this league, and it shows you that division specifically with them looking up to link up again with the Tampa Bay Lightning, and then if you move past them, it's probably the Boston Bruins. But again, bring it on, and we'll see what happens in the spring. And also, we close in on the trade deadline. That'll be a big topic of focus for us here on the show over the next little while to see what the Leafs do before the trade deadline, before things get really, really serious into the stretch drive into the Stanley Cup playoffs. Great job today, Rosie. I know you're not with us tomorrow. I believe you'll have another edition of 3 Hits with Rosie. And I guess the next time we chat, face-to-face will be Thursday.
Rock and roll. Looking forward to it. That was a fun show tonight. Good job getting Bruce on. What a beauty, man. Can't wait to see where he lands up in the hockey world. It'll be somewhere cool. So that was fun, man. See you on Thursday.
Could be Toronto. You never know. For Jay Rosehill, I'm Nick Alberga. Thanks so much for watching and listening. Take care.